morning. Welcome to the UU Church of the South Hills, also known as Sunnyhill. We are delighted you could join us for this service. Our mission at Sunnyhill is to create a more just and compassionate community within and beyond our walls. My name is Roxy Mountjoy, and I serve as a worship associate for this congregation. If you're a newcomer or visitor to our congregation, please go to sunnyhill.org and click on the button that says New to Sunnyhill to receive more information about our congregation and to receive our weekly email newsletter. If you're joining us online today, please say hello or good morning in the comments on Facebook or YouTube. We'd like to hear from you and extend you a welcome as well. Today's service is titled Sabbath Wisdom. The idea that a day of rest may seem quaint and outdated, especially in a world that appears to be on fire. But if we are to be functional and at least somewhat effective as bringers of justice and compassion, we need a day of rest more than ever before. How can we make room for Sabbath wisdom in the midst of the many demands of our lives? Our opening words were written by Burton Carley. We gather on this Sabbath morning to worship in spirit and truth, to raise a joyful noise to the eternal mystery, to reconfirm our covenant to seek wisdom in love, to strengthen our commitment to the common good. We come from many paths to explore that which is hidden, to consider the ways of our hearts, to confess how we have stumbled, to heal what is broken. We assemble in the effort to quicken our compassion and mercy, to deepen our understanding, to renew our courage, to remember who we are. Thus do we celebrate the grace and gift of life and practice our faith to the greater glory of the Spirit. Please join me in saying the words to light our chalice. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together.
Come, whoever you are. It's around. So we're going to split right down the middle. You're on that side. And you don't actually have to split. We'll sing it a few times together, and then I'll start leading this side of the room, and y'all, Rev Jim, will start leading that side of the room. Wait for it. There you go.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair.
Ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again,
Whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair.
ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come.
You are wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair.
Ours is no caravan of
Hold that last line. Come yet again, come.
Great, thank you. Please be seated.
Good morning. If there are any children present, I invite you to join me up here at the front. right on these steps right over here. Good morning. I love your shirt. It says, "My mom is my hero." I love that. Okay, come up here right on these steps, okay? Good job. All right, friends. Does anyone here love a good afternoon nap? Yes, I adore them. I need them. Sundays are usually one of those days for me where I absolutely need an afternoon nap. I go home after church, Mary does too, and I crash, absolutely crash. We all have things that consume our energy. For me, some of those things are large crowds of people. Crosby, watch me. Large crowds of people staring at my computer screen for hours and conflict. Energy completely gone, zapped. How do you recharge when your energy is zapped? Sometimes I would love to just scream like Frank Costanza, "Serenity now!" And everything will be okay and peaceful in the world and in my mind. Unfortunately, it's not that easy. It wasn't for Frank Costanza either. In American society, we're often rewarded for going and going and going like the Energizer Bunny. We value a solid work ethic and not stopping until the job is done. But what does that do to our minds and our bodies? There's so many issues facing us right now that it can be overwhelming when you think about it. As Unitarian Universalists, we're called to make this world a better place. But where do we start? And once we start, how do we take a break when we need to? Tricia Hersey, the founder of something called the Knapp Ministry, where she tells us that rest is resistance. She says that taking the time to pause is an activism against our consumer-driven culture, particularly for people of color who have been abused by the system for generations. It is about more than just naps, she says, but about taking time for self-care and self-love, in a culture that tells us our value is wrapped up in what we can produce. Taking this time for ourselves to recharge allows us to be more present, more aware, and more capable of doing the important work that needs to be done for us to achieve our goal of creating a more just and compassionate community. So, take a nap. Step away from the screen during your lunch break. Sit quietly in a garden. Take a walk in the woods. Find what recharges your batteries and embrace it. Today, in RE class, we're going to be experimenting with some ways that we can look to nature about ways to recharge. If any children that are here or present would like to join us, we'll be heading downstairs. But first, we will sing our children out to As You Go. Let's go. Okay, meet me down there.
As you go, may joy surround you. As you go, go in peace. Know our love is with you always. As you go, as you go, as you go, may joy surround you. As you go, go in peace. Know our love is with you always. As you go, as you go. I'm coming home to the wisdom in my bones. In my bones, I'm coming home to the wisdom in my bones. coming home to the wisdom in my bones. I'm coming home to the wisdom in my bones. In my bones, I'm coming home to the wisdom in my bones.
I'm coming home to the wisdom in my bones. In my bones. I'm coming home to the wisdom in my bones. I'm coming home to the wisdom in my bones. In my bones, I'm coming home to the wisdom in my bones. I'm coming home to the wisdom in my bones. In my bones, I'm coming home to the wisdom in my bones. I'm coming home to the wisdom in my bones. In my bones, I'm coming home to the wisdom in my bones. I long for rest. I long for peace. I'm coming home to the wisdom in my bones. This is the time in our service when we share joys and sorrows submitted by members of the congregation. After each joy or sorrow that I read, please respond by saying, "We hold you in our hearts." A sorrow from Cindy Menser. Cindy says, "My dear sweet brother, Tom Giles, died yesterday. After many years of struggling with Alzheimer's disease, he is finally soaring with the angels." To Cindy, we hold you in our hearts. A joy from Louis Portella, who says, "I'm grateful to walk away from an accident while landing my flight club's glider on Saturday. It's refreshed my perspective on life, but spooked the living daylights out of me." To Louis, we hold you in our hearts. Please join me in the spirit of meditation or prayer. Let us take a moment to be still. To know in the silence of this moment that there is more than just the noisiness of life in our heads and around us. Let us take this moment to be open, to feel those things which now call to be felt, the deep currents that run beneath the shallower concerns of everyday life. Let us take this moment to focus on just this: our breathing, the warmth of our bodies, the reassuring closeness of those around us. We pause now for a moment of shared silence. May we take the stillness of this moment with us, that the pace of our lives might be more gentle. May we take the openness of this moment with us, that we might see with clarity possibility rather than certainty. May we take the focus of this moment with us, that we might see each moment for what it is, and that every breath might bring us back to now. Amen.
I need silence so that I can hear the music. And I need darkness so that I can see the light. And I need the cold so that I can feel the warmth of another's heart. And I need to know what's wrong so that I can do what's right. I need silence so that I can hear the music. And I need darkness so that I can see the light. And I need the cold so that I can feel the warmth of another's heart. And I need to know what's wrong so that I can do what's right. I need silence so that I can hear the music. And I need darkness so that I can see the light. And I need the cold so that I can feel the warmth of another's heart. And I need to know what's wrong so that I can do what's right. I need silence so that I can hear the music. And I need darkness so that I can see the light. And I need the cold so that I can feel the warmth of another's heart. And I need to know what's wrong so that I can do what's right.
As most of you know, today is my first day back at church after a 2-month sabbatical. Thank you. I honestly wasn't going for applause, but that's good to hear. In fact, I wasn't entirely sure when I got back that I wouldn't face a scenario where the locks were all changed and my stuff was in a box by the curb. But that didn't happen, as it has happened at other places. Also, the church did not entirely fall down. There's a little bit of water damage in the back, but that was good to see as well. I tried to make this a true sabbatical, that is, an actual break and rest, rather than a time of intensive studying or writing. It was really good, just terrific, and I am so grateful to this congregation for granting me this time, which is a tradition for most UU congregations and UU ministers. I wish that I could grant each and every one of you a sabbatical from your own jobs and other pursuits. Now, perhaps more than ever, we really do need such breaks in our lives. The word sabbatical comes from the Hebrew Shabbat, or Sabbath, which literally means he rested, referring to God resting on the seventh day of creation. And the concept of a sabbatical has its origins in the 25th chapter of the book of Leviticus, which requires that Jews in the land of Israel take a year-long break from working in the fields every 7 years. The passage from Leviticus says, 6 years you shall sow your field, and 6 years you shall prune your vineyard and gather in their yield. But in the 7th year there shall be a Sabbath of complete rest for the land. You shall not sow your field or prune your vineyard. You shall not reap the aftergrowth of your harvest or gather the grapes of your unpruned vine. It shall be a year of complete rest for the land. Now, the book of Leviticus is problematic for all kinds of reasons that I'm not going to address today. But this passage seems particularly wise and relevant, both from an agricultural perspective and from a human perspective. The land needs to rest, and so do we. Otherwise, the soil and our own souls start to turn to dust, unable to produce anything of any use to ourselves or to others. One of the challenges of the past 2.5 years for many of us is that the pandemic shutdown simply did not serve as a break as we thought it might at the beginning. In fact, for those of us who started working from home, work was suddenly impossible to escape. It was no longer possible to leave our work at the office, as the office was our own kitchen table or living room or bedroom. I found myself writing and responding to emails at 11 or 12 o'clock at night, something I would never have done when working at my office away from home. So it seemed harder than ever to escape work. And at the same time, the level of stress skyrocketed for all kinds of reasons, including having to relearn how we do everything that we were used to doing in another way. The pandemic changed and has continued to change nearly everything about how we do work, about how we do church, about how we cope or fail to cope with unprecedented levels of anxiety. We need a break, a time when we stop all our sowing and pruning and instead rest and experience something like stillness. And yes, it's easier said than done. My own sabbatical, while certainly restful in many ways, was far from still. I somehow managed to undertake several more small trips than I had originally planned, and while I did not do any significant amount of church work while I was out, I did a lot of other things that kind of felt like work. Lots of fun but taxing college visits with my daughter, who's a high school senior this year. A number of family visits, including seeing extended family, some of whom I had not seen in years or more than years, and a fairly long list of household tasks that I had never gotten around to before, some of which I still have not quite gotten around to. But if nothing else, my sabbatical underscored for me the importance and sacred nature of time itself. There's a bumper sticker that reads, "Warning, dates in calendar are closer than they appear." It's almost as if we see time creeping up on us in the rearview mirror, sometimes as if it were the grim reaper himself. And the fear of approaching time does, in fact, ultimately point toward a fear of death. But that's not the whole story of time. We, as human beings, occupy space. In fact, we often acquire space, colonize it, move through it at great speeds, fill it up, people it, pollute it, or preserve it as we see fit. In many ways, we transcend space. But time transcends us. We may occupy a great deal of space, but we are here only for a brief moment in time. And because we cannot control or conquer time, we tend to fear it. But the passage of time and the appreciation of time need not be filled with fear. More than anything else, time is a gift, not a challenge. And observing the Sabbath in some way can help us recognize time as something sacred rather than something to be dreaded. Abraham Joshua Heschel wrote a book called The Sabbath, which is perhaps the greatest work of theology on the subject of Sabbath and its meaning for us as modern or postmodern human beings. Heschel wrote, "Time is both near and far, intrinsic to all experience and transcending all experience. Time, then, is otherness, a mystery that hovers above all categories. It is as if time and the mind were a world apart, yet it is only within time that there is a fellowship and togetherness of all beings. This very moment," Heschel said, "belongs to all living beings as it belongs to me. We share time. We own space. Through my ownership of space, I am a rival of all other beings. Through my living in time, I am a contemporary of all other beings." When we take a sabbatical or celebrate Sabbath in whatever way we do, when we set aside some portion of time as sacred time, a time of stillness and reflection, then we are celebrating what joins us together rather than what separates us. It is this recognition of time as the dwelling place of togetherness that makes it sacred. We can't help but share time, but we can only recognize its significance in our shared lives if we celebrate a Sabbath of some kind. Rites of passage are important for just this reason. In celebrating these rites, child blessings, coming of age ceremonies, weddings, memorial services, we are able to come to a recognition of our ultimate togetherness, our shared experience that exists only in the sacredness of time. Hebrew Bible scholar and theologian Walter Brueggemann wrote that Sabbath is about withdrawal from the anxiety system of Pharaoh. the refusal to let one's life be defined by production and consumption. But how did we arrive at this place where we feel that we must fill every moment of every day with ceaseless activity and busyness, this production and consumption, this anxiety system of Pharaoh? In America, part of the problem can be traced back to our Puritan ancestors and the Calvinist theology that dominated early American intellectual and emotional landscapes. According to Calvinist theology, our ultimate fate was unknown, but most of us were damned to eternal hell no matter what we did. However, it was still important to live in such a way as to demonstrate our worthiness outwardly, our fitness for a place in paradise. As UU Kathy Bowers states, when the alternatives are eternal blessedness or eternal damnation, it makes sense to spend as much time as possible accumulating proof on the side of blessedness, which in the case of the Calvinists meant working and succeeding. Despite strict laws having to do with the observance of the Sabbath, the Calvinists had a fundamental disconnection with the idea of sacred time. Hard work and moral rectitude were highly valued, while downtime simply was not. As contemporary Unitarian Universalists, we affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person. In this case, our inherent worth comes not from what we do or what we accomplish, but rather from the fact of our being. And our being, especially our being together, is directly related to the nature of time. A story is told about a rabbi who once entered heaven in a dream. He was permitted to approach the temple in paradise where the great sages of the Talmud, known as the Tanaim, were spending their eternal lives. He saw that they were just sitting around tables studying the Talmud, the central text of rabbinic Judaism. The disappointed rabbi wondered, is this all there is to paradise? But suddenly he heard a voice, you are mistaken. The Tanaim are not in paradise. Paradise is in the Tanaim. In other words, the wisest and the most holy among us are those who understand that gaining an appreciation of time is perhaps the most sacred of all human pursuits. And we don't arrive at this understanding by trying to fill time the way we fill space. Rather, we arrive at this place of wisdom by observing the emptiness of time and internalizing its flow through stillness. It's been pointed out, although I'm not sure it's entirely true, that the Chinese pictograph for busy is made up of two characters, the character for heart and the character for disappear. If busy means heart vanishing or heart vanquishing, then Sabbath means heart restoring. Restorative in the literal sense, physical sense, and restorative in the metaphorical, spiritual sense as well. UU theologian Rebecca Parker wrote, "This question challenges me more than any other in life. How do I live in a way that keeps faith with beauty? With the beauty I have known, the beauty of all people everywhere, the beauty of the earth? How do I resist the violence that tears us from one another and from the earth? When the violence goes deep into the core of the human soul as it has in mine, how is the heart restored? I suggest to you that observing the Sabbath is one way in which we restore the heart. Our Sabbath is not so much about strict adherence to laws, which in themselves might only add to our stress and consternation. Rather, a meaningful observance of the Sabbath is one in which we celebrate through stillness and reflection with others the sacredness of time. Mindfulness has become something of a sometimes overused buzzword in recent decades, but it's an important aspect of the concept of Sabbath. The fourth commandment in the book of Exodus, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, is the only commandment that begins with that word, remember. Most of the others, as you will no doubt recall, begin with thou shalt not. So the Sabbath, more than any other pursuit, has to do with a kind of mindfulness that enables us to experience time in a different way. As my sabbatical was drawing to a close, I spent a week by myself in the mountains of western North Carolina, as I do most summers. I spent the week hiking and reading and making music. And I spent a lot of time just looking and listening intently without any immediate purpose. In those moments, I became aware of the sacredness of time, and my heart began to feel restored. I experienced something like what Wendell Berry was thinking about when he wrote these words: "When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free." I hope and pray that we will learn how vitally important it is to our bodies and our souls to celebrate the Sabbath, to make room for recognition of sacred time, and that in so doing, we might rest in the grace of the world and be free. May it be so. Amen.
Please rise and bow to your spirit. For our hymn, "Wake Now My Senses."
Wake now my senses and hear the
It's time for our morning offering. We don't have a designated offering this morning, so our collection will benefit Sunnyhill and will help defray our operating expenses. If you'd like to make a gift via our online giving system, you can do so by going to sunnyhill.org and click on the button that says Online Giving, and then follow the instructions. Or you can give by text at 412-324-3130. Text the amount of your gift and the word pledge if you want your payment to apply to your 2022 Sunnyhill pledge. Otherwise, text gifts will go toward our general operating fund. You can also mail a check if you prefer, and you can find our mailing address on our website, sunnyhill.org. For those of you who are here with us in person, we'll be passing our offering baskets in just a moment. Thank you, everyone, for your generosity. Please join me in saying the words to extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts, until we are together again.
Before I read our closing words, I just want to say thank you to everyone who helped keep things going in my absence. Our staff stepped up in a big way. Our worship associates, our guest speakers, including several of you who are here today, and everyone else who had a part in keeping things going. Thank you so much. It's great to come back and know that the church is in such good hands and in such good shape. We'll close with these words from Tim Haley. We walk this earth but a brief moment in time. Amid our suffering and pain, however great or small, let us continue to learn how to celebrate life. Let us continue to grow in our capacity to love ourselves and each other. And let us continue to move toward the goal of a just world community. Go this day in a renewed spirit of peace and hope, and with the wisdom to greet the new week. Go in peace.